everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to do some foiling, some ink blending, and we are going to get our inspiration from a new to me product that I actually received for Christmas and I'm excited to use. So in today's video we are going to be using the Morning Blooms hot foil plate. This is a rather large hot foil plate. It covers the front of an A2 card very easily. And it also came with coordinating stencils, which I'll be using today. I am not aware if this has a coordinating die, but if it does, I do not have that. And so I won't be using that, obviously. I'm showing you the coordinating stencils that we'll be using, and these are my ink blending brushes, but I end up switching these out for my mini ink blending brushes. Like I said in the beginning, we're going to be doing some foiling, so I have some shiny silver foil from Spellbinders. We're going to be using that on some Hammermill cardstock. This is foil for glimmer foil, not toner foiling. There is a difference. If you use toner foil, this will not work. You have to use glimmer foil. That is some Hammermill cardstock. That is the cardstock that I prefer to use for all of my things now. The only thing I've discovered I cannot use that Hammermill cardstock for is with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I'm going to be using this brushed sentiments from Pinkfresh Studio. This has stamps, stencils, dies, and hot foil plates. So I purchased the entire kit and caboodle just because I really do enjoy having all these options. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog jingling. He got a monkey for Christmas and now he is going to beat it up and tear it apart. This is where I got my color inspiration from. These are the Color Cube boxes by Sarah Renee Clark. This is volume 1. There is a volume 2. There's over 200 of these cards in these boxes, and this one is card 243. On the back, it gives you the color that you're using, and then it gives you a 20% shade and a 20% tint. So that if you wanted to have a slightly different color combination, you could. And that is where I'm going to get my color inspiration for today's video. I went through my ink swatch charts that I have and picked colors that match this color palette as close as possible, and this is what I came up with. We have Taffy and Watermelon from Simon Says Stamp. We have Party Dress and Royal Treatment from Catherine Pooler. And then we are going to be using Altenew's Blush and Concord and Ninth's Parsley. Parsley is a color that was not actually in that Color Cube swatch set, but I needed a green, so I picked that one. I felt that one worked well. So here's my glimmer machine. I have that turned on. It has a red light on right now, which means the platform is not ready, and I'm just going to have that heat up. I am going to use all of these hot foil plates. I'm only going to end up using one sentiment from that brushed sentiments foil plate set, but because I have the machine out, I might as well do them all. That way, if I make a card in the future, I've got some on hand. I'll just slip the extras in the back of the stamp storage pocket. So I'm just going to create like a hinge on each of these card front panels so that this foil plate sits nicely. So what I've done is I have used that Hammermill cardstock. I have put the pretty side of the foil kissing the actual pattern side of the foil plate, and I trimmed off all of the excess. If you trim off the excess, you have less overfoiling, and so I did that with all of the panels. So it is the cardstock, the pretty side of the foil touching or kissing the the pattern side of your foil plate. I did that to every single one of those. Now, if you notice, my glimmer system, I have a green solid light, which means the platform is ready. So I've placed the glimmer sandwich, I guess you could say, paper sandwich, with the foil touching the hot part of that glimmer system, or the gray part that gets hot. I have discovered with my machine I need one cardstock shim, and then I need the spacer pad and a thin shim. And those come with your glimmer system. Not the spare cardstock, but the other two plates do come with it. And I'm going to roll this forward and back. This is in real time. This is how slow I go. I discover if you go really fast, you don't get as good of an impression. It needs that pressure from your machine in order to get this to transfer. And so I go really slow. You can already see that I am going to have some beautiful results. I was really excited by how this turned out. This turned out perfect. There was no skipping. There was no missed spots. It was perfect. Does this happen every time for me? No, it does not. I am going to you can keep that negative piece and use the solid hot foil plate to glimmer and cut out that. I chose to just throw that away today. I guess I'm a very wasteful crafter. So this is the second plate of that brush sentiment set, and I'm going to do the same thing. The sandwich for the paper and the foil is the same, and I'm going to put that shiny side, or the foil plate, touching the hot part. And while that's heating, while that's going through, I'm going to go ahead and use the coordinating die to cut out these sentiments. This is one solid die. The stamp is one solid piece, and the stencils do the 6 words in one run too, which is very nice. It saves a lot of time, and it's very helpful. So I just ran that through my die cut machine and cut that out while that other hot foil plate is heating. I do leave that hot foil plate on there a little bit longer past when that timer goes off, just because this is a more solid plate. It's a little bit larger, and so I do give that just a little bit extra time to heat, maybe 30 seconds or so, just because it is so solid. I do try to hold on to those plates while I run them through, just because that those top plates will kind of jump, and sometimes I've gotten some double foiling or some misfoiling. It just wasn't as crisp a result, and so if you kind of hold on to those plates, you don't have that as much. I did have a little bit of overfoiling right there, but it doesn't matter. When I use that coordinating die, you won't even see it. Now you can hear my child has woken up, so this is a perfect time to be doing this voiceover. So sorry about that, y'all. So here are the results of that morning blooms bouquet. There is a little bit of overfoiling, and I'm going to show you how to fix that. Some of that came off just brushing my finger over it, particularly in those little flowers. I find I get some kind of like dusting, for lack of better words, of overfoiling, and that usually comes off when you rub your finger on it. But the other foiling doesn't necessarily come off. So this is both of those brush sentiments dies, both plates of those die cut and foiled. You can have a variety of sentiments with it. They turned out beautiful. They look like they are, factory made die cuts. They look beautiful. They turned out so, so well. Like I said, I'm only going to be using one of those today, and I'll put the rest of those in the back of the stamp storage pocket. I have a mono sand eraser here, and I am using the actual sanding portion of that to try to get rid of some of that overfoiling. There was a really bad spot in between the stems of the bouquet towards the bottom, right where I'm at now. That one I tried really hard to kind of not touch the stems of the bouquet because I wanted that foiling. I did kind of end up going over those, and it lost some of its luster, I guess you could say. But it's still beautiful, and it still worked out. If you notice, this bouquet is kind of off-centered, and that's okay. I figured I would be using my larger brush sentiments. Those sentiments are quite large, to go in that bottom left corner, so it'll balance out the card better. Here I told you I had to switch to my mini ink blending brushes because the stencil set has multiple sections of each of this image, of this total image on one stencil. I was not confident that I wouldn't get ink where I didn't want it. And so I switched to my mini ink blending brushes to do that. So for the trumpet of this daffodil flower, I'm going to use this taffy ink. And I'm going to do this same inking style or process for all of these flowers. So where I want it to be darkest is where I'm going to first apply my ink. And I'm going to do that with a heavier hand. I'm not mashing it to where I'm going to like the barrel of this ink blending brush, but I am applying a bit more pressure. And then as I want it to lighten up, I lift up my hand a little bit and I don't apply as much pressure. And I don't go back to the ink pad to get more ink, if that makes any sense. So if you see right here, it is darker toward that bottom right, and it lightens up as it goes up to the left, top left. And I'm going to do that same process for all of these. Where I want it to be darker, I'm going to apply more ink with a heavier hand, and where I want it to lighten up, usually toward the end of the flower or end of the petal or end of the leaf, is where I want it to be lighter, and so I won't have as much pressure on my hand at that point. For the actual leaves of this, I'm going to use the watermelon ink, and again, toward the center of the flower, I'm going to have it be darker, and so I will apply more ink, and I will use a heavier hand, and I will lighten or lift my hand as I go toward the outside or the end of the petal or end of the leaf. That is going to be the process that I follow for all of these flowers, all of these leaves, every stencil on this image. I just wanted you to kind of see that in real time, and then I am going to speed this up because it is the same process for all of this. So that daffodil flower is done. I'm going to move on to the smaller flowers, and for those I'm going to use the Altenew Blush ink. I'm going to use that same blending brush. I have the same blending brush for pinks and reds, and all I did was use my little flower sack cloth that you see in the bottom left corner of the screen to just kind of brush the excess ink off. And I'm going to use that blush ink. These are smaller flowers, and this blending brush is kind of large for those. So for the most part, these are all the same color. There's not really a whole lot of variation in these. But for some of the other flowers, and they're really close together. And so for some of the other flowers, smaller flowers, I do get some variation in those, but these were pretty difficult. Plus it's a very light ink, and I would be there forever trying to get some variation in it. So you could do that if you wanted to spend more time, but I wanted to kind of get on with the process. I am using my glass board. I got a bigger one for Christmas and I was pretty excited. Thank you, Hubbin. And so I am using the magnets and my larger glass board to help hold that stencil in place so I don't have to hold it with my hands. And that is very helpful. So for these bell-shaped flowers, I'm using Catherine Pooler's Party Dress. And in this one, I was able to get some more color variation. This is a bit more of a darker or vibrant ink. It's not quite as pale as that blush ink from Altenew. And so for the buds, I went directly from the ink pad to those buds and made those a bit darker. So those do have some variation. And then toward like the round part, or the, I guess, base of these bell flowers, I was able to get some color variation. And how I did that is I literally went from the ink pad to the flower and I brushed down. I didn't do a circular motion like I normally do. I kind of did a swiping motion down. And that gave me some color variation in those also. So this is everything that stencil 1 colors. Stencil 2 is going to color that other large flower and all of the greenery. And the greenery is split up so that if you wanted to color in these leaves in a variation of colors, you absolutely could. I did all in Parsley, but again, I tried to make it darker toward the base of the leaf and lighter toward the outer edge of the leaf. And this is a good way, if you have a very limited supply of inks, to get some variation of color with those inks and not have a huge supply of them. Just lift your hand, apply more ink and more pressure where you want it darker, and lighten it up as you get to spots where you want it to be lighter. That is a good way to stretch your supplies that you have, particularly if you're just starting out, or maybe inks are not where you spend a lot of money, but you still want to have some variation with them. This is a good way to accomplish that. So for this large flower, I am using that Royal Treatment ink from Catherine Pooler. And again, applying a heavier hand toward the middle and lightening it up toward the outer edge. And I will do that for this entire image. So here's that Parsley ink. Again, same concept, darker toward the base, lighter toward the edges, and that will finish all of the stenciling. Some of these leaves I wanted to just be dark. If they didn't have any veining through them, I just made them a solid dark color. Again, just applying a lot of that Parsley ink from Concord and Ninth. How I cleaned these stencils, I just sprayed them with my stamp cleaner on my flour sackcloth and brushed them clean. Because this is not a like paste or a gel, you don't have to clean it immediately. These inks did end up staining my stencils, but that is the sign of a good quality ink. Again, that just shows you, this is the stencil all colored. That foil does resist the ink, and so it sits on top. So I'm just finding some quote-unquote clean parts of this flour sackcloth and just trying to kind of brush some of that ink that's resting on top of the foil, try to brush that away. For the sentiment, I went with hello. I felt like the hello was getting lost, and so I wanted to add some ink to it. I tried to just add some of the blush ink toward the bottom, and that was pretty, but I felt like it wasn't enough. I still felt like the sentiment was getting lost. So what I do is I end up applying blush all over. And notice that this ink blending brush, because it is so soft, it does not scratch your foil. It does not mar it. It doesn't do anything to it. So don't worry about doing your foiling before and then ink blending over it. You're not going to hurt your foiling. So what I did is I applied the blush all over, and I didn't like that either. I still felt like I needed some more color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give this almost a two-tone dipped look. So I'm going to apply this watermelon ink from Simon to the bottom of this image, to the bottom of this die cut. And that's going to give it a blush pink at the top and a darker watermelon pink at the bottom. And that I liked a lot better. I do end up going back and see that just stands out a lot better. You could have done the purple and the pink. You could have done the green, whatever color you chose to do. But I chose that. I thought these two pinks looked good together. So that's what I went with. I am going to brush off the ink that's sitting on the foil. And then I'm going to end up popping this up with some foam tape from Altenew, their Instant Dimension foam tape, and I will adhere that in the bottom left corner of this image. I did end up cutting off about 1/4 of an inch from the left and the bottom of this image just so that I could have some more color. I did adhere that sentiment down with that Instant Dimension foam tape, and then from my stash I picked some silver shiny sequins. I purchased those off of Amazon forever ago. And I'm just adhering those with little dots of reptile glue, and that will complete the card. I thank you so much for watching and spending time with me today. I hope you were inspired. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.